what is force is a good thing to talk about. How to show the body using force? Well, it's all going to be in the pose, right? It's the physical power or strength possessed by a living being through the use of body mechanics. So strength or power exerted upon an object. So that's what force means. So in order to have weight for the heaviness of the object, we need force. So weight and balance is also going to be important here. We want to make our object heavy, not easily managed. If it's light or easy for your character, you will not be accomplishing the heavy object. And how would this affect the body? It would be all in the pose. So for instance, if I'm just standing and then I decide to push something, like if there's a large box and I decide to push it, am I interacting with a heavy object here? My center of gravity is over my feet. So I actually have no leverage to really push something heavy. Does that make sense? Versus if now I get my center of gravity off balance, now I can actually push something heavy. You know, I'm pushing with this back foot. This back foot, basically this leg straightening is what's making something go forward. So it's really in the pose, and that's why we're talking about poses a lot today. So also the center of the object, the heavy object becomes the center of gravity. Another example, if I'm just standing there and I'm holding the heavy object, and it's a sphere, does that look like a heavy object? So look at where the center of gravity of the object is. It's not supported by the character. So it can't possibly be heavy because there's no support. There's nothing underneath it. Versus this kind of pose, so this classic lifting pose, we'll look at where the center of gravity is and look at where the feet are. So the feet are supporting it now. Also see how the center of the object and the character's center of gravity are as close as possible. There's no distance between them. So effort versus effect is a system that I came up with to help you guys understand about force and weight and how to show something heavy. But you want to think about the amount of effort of your character and how much resulting movement there is. So you want to aim for lots of effort and less effect. So if I'm putting 5% effort, so this effort I'm putting in and the result of my action. So if I put in 5% effort and I get 100% effect, is that a heavy object? Is that a struggle of something heavy? What if I put in 20% of effort and I get 100% effect? Is that a heavy object? Is that struggling with something? Do you guys see what I'm getting at here? What if I put in 80% of my effort and I get 5% effect? Does that look like a heavy object that I'm struggling with? Does that kind of make sense to everyone? So it's just a conceptual idea where you can kind of try to assess how much effort a character or your reference is putting in and how much effect it's having, right? So remember that optimal word is the struggle. So we were trying to show the struggle. So effort versus effect is one of your tools to look at. Another thing to think about, this is more about storytelling, but it's similar idea, is we don't retry in the same way. If I put in 20% effort and I'm getting 0 effect, I'm not going to keep going 20, 20, 20. That doesn't make any sense, right? So if it doesn't work, then I'm going to try harder. I'm going to try something different. I'm going to try more intensity. Does that make sense to everyone? And so this would help you with your increasing in intensity. Anticipations and overshoots, this is really the only way you're going to be able to show weight. So just like with your bouncing ball, when something is falling, it's going to be speeding up. Everything speeds up when it falls, but a heavier object would speed up faster, right? So it's going to look heavier when it's speeding up faster. This one is lighter than this one. So the arc shape, for instance, when something is falling, is where you're going to be able to show the spacing. So if we don't have, remember some people had some arcs that were kind of linear, and then they were kind of confused as to what to do with the spacing. You know what I mean? And that's because it has to fall in order to show the increase in speed when you're falling. So the arc has to look like an arc shape that there's a fall from. Slowing down around the change of direction, another similar idea based on bouncing balls. So we're slowing down because we're changing direction. So heavy objects take more time to change direction. Another thing you can think about is if I had my bicycle and then there was a big truck and they were both going straight for a while, and then they both wanted to make a sharp right turn, which one would have to slow down more, the bike or the truck? Yeah, the truck, right, Emma, because it's heavier. So once a heavy object is in motion, it's difficult to get it to change direction. Slowing down around the change of direction, objects must slow down more than light objects. The change of direction is in the spacing is one of the only ways to show the weight. And we always want to avoid even spacing. We don't want even spacing, okay? Because it kind of is the opposite of everything we know about weight and speed and spacing. Heavy objects increase in speed when they're falling. Same would be when you're going up, you're only decreasing in speed. Those are the basics of weight and spacing, so we want to follow that. The reversals, we'll see some examples of that, but that's basically when the character kind of reverses their arc of their body. And it can add really dynamic nature. It's going to be kind of essential for this assignment because you're going to want to show exaggeration in the character's body. So now we're going to look at some examples. And then this is kind of a more cartoony lift where, you know, the legs straighten first and then the object comes after. You can see a nice reversal. There's also an overshoot at the top and it comes down. And then as this is something important that happens a lot that you want to notice is as he's coming down, he has momentum this direction. If the ball came up, this heavy ball came up and then it came down, it's actually going to keep having momentum this direction. And it would keep going that direction if he didn't take a step with his foot. See how he has to take a step with the foot? But that kind of thing, if you're just doing a simple lift, you actually want that kind of thing where you show, that's a great way to show the weight because you can show it has momentum backwards and you have to stop it. Now there's a lot of struggle here. Look at the effort versus effect. So effort versus effect is pretty high effort. And it's okay if your character like wins or accomplishes whatever they want, you know, at the end. You can totally have it affecting the object. It's just, you want to show the struggle, which is part of the assignment. Some important things to notice about this is we have squashing. Remember, squash and stretch for your anticipations and overshoots. Readjusting. So if something doesn't work, you readjust, you try a different way, right? So he tried to pull it, that didn't work. So he tried a different way. He tried getting closer to the object, squashing down, then lifting up. We have reversals, overshoots, and then it falls again, right? So we have overshoots and then it falls again. And then another stretch as he's trying to push it. And then he's trying to lift it, so it's going to squash him down for a moment. The momentum backwards, remember that came up before, it's very important. So as it was falling, it has momentum backwards, which now he has to adjust his body for. And then we can see examples maybe that things we don't want to do. So there's several things. The poses aren't really clear. We have the character body really far away from the object. We have the object, basically he's putting weight on the object and then he's moving the object. That doesn't make much sense, right? And then we don't really have a clear anticipation because he kind of comes down and then stops and then another slow lift up. So here you can see how the slow lifts up don't really work, right? Then the object is kind of like far away from, like this is a standing pose. If you just remove the box, this would be like a normal standing pose, right? Important things like that. We could see whenever you're bending the arm, you're saying that the arm bicep is the only thing holding this up. When you have a bent arm, it's going to look lighter than if you had a straight arm. So if you had a straight arm like trying to hold something, it's going to look heavier than a bent arm. Because you're basically saying your bicep is strong enough to hold that box, which if your bicep is strong enough, then it's not heavy. Does that kind of make sense to everyone?